let's see. Here we are today in 2022. And does anyone know when the Oregon Country Fair started? When did it start? Does anybody know? Got a guess? What do you think? Thank you. A very powerful year. 1969. So if you can believe that. 1969 that started. Some of us weren't born yet. Some of us were young and small or to be born. But 1969, that was an important year in world global history. Probably in our lifetimes that we know about, it's one of the more important years was 1969. So anyone know why 1969 historically is a very important year? A couple things were going on. Anybody remember? What do you think? Thank you. We'll get to that. So, thank you. Man on the Moon. That was a big deal because 1969, all you can probably remember, I remember as a little kid, it was amazing. They were going to land a man on the frickin' moon, right? So that was actually happening, that the Apollo ship was taking off and everybody was gathering by their TVs. So black and white, basically, back then, too. So if you really got to think back, the fair and the man on the moon are happening at the same time. That's not a coincidence, right? That is very important that the technological data field people were landing a man on the moon and the fair people were getting together to create something right here on Earth at this spot that you stand on today. So I like that kind of parallel technically. We're reaching out into the universe. All the technology, science, data, fact, fiction is pushing to put us on the moon. And some other people are working to save this Earth and put the Oregon Country Fair together because 1969 is a pivotal year. So you can have all your technology, involvement, evolution, but if you're not getting your human evolution and your social and culture evolution together here on Earth, it doesn't really all matter that much. And right now we have guys, billionaires, and what are they trying to do? They're trying to get to the moon first, right? So it's funny how that works. It's still going on. Bezos and Tesla dude and all these guys are racing to get to the moon. We already did that 50 years ago. We already achieved that goal. There's also something else really important going on. Our friends maybe at a different location than this location were thinking very similar in 1969. Anybody know what was happening? Patrick, what else was happening in 69 on maybe the other side of the coast?
I wasn't even born.
You weren't even born yet. All right, hit the crowd. Over here in Oregon, we were doing our thing, and there's some other people doing something else on the other coast. Anybody know what was going on in 1969 parallel to the fair? Woodstock, thank you. Yes, so this is very important. If you want to put things in context, Woodstock is super famous, and everybody knows Woodstock. It was amazing. Anybody know what Woodstock was famous for? A few things, but a couple bands maybe. Yeah, they had a hell of a lineup, right? The fair lineup, no, I won't get to that, but...
Poor organization.
Yeah, see, this is what people understand about the fair. The fair is freaking organized, and that's why we're here 51 years in a row. The Woodstock guys, New Yorkers, you know, they didn't quite have that. They have great vision, they made shit happen, they just didn't have the community organization together that we've got here at the fair. And everybody complains about fair rules and fair this, but you know what that does? Some rules are actually kind of good because it allows you to be in the same place 50-something years in a row and not blow it, right? Well, that's why we have all these little rules and regulations and how you got to get here. So Woodstock, what happened to Woodstock? Well, why is that? Why does everybody know the name Woodstock? Why is there a Snoopy character named Woodstock? What is it about this Woodstock thing? Anybody know? I think some of you know. This is why I'm here, though. We'll get you informed. So, yeah, great. Oh, man, the lineup, the bands, the music was all about the music, right? So that's what, the funny thing about fair, someone said, well, who's playing this year? I said, you know what? I didn't even look. I have no idea who's playing at the fair this year. But Woodstock, you had to look at the poster, and you got Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin and The Who, and Creedence Clearwater and the Grateful Dead, and Johnny Winter and Mountain, and all these bands that were huge, Joan Baez, and huge bands. So they were kind of going the opposite direction. They were going for the big lineup, put everybody together. But they had a little funny problem at that event. Anybody know how many people they were planning to attend Woodstock?
150.
He was thinking tops, I'll get 150 tickets. Let's see, they're like $8 a ticket. I think 150 might work, but if I get 50, I'll be okay. I'll kind of pay the bills. But there's a little problem there with the calculations back then. There's no social media, no Facebook invites, no who's attending, who's coming, so on and so forth. Anybody know how many people showed up to this little party?
500.
500,000 people. So imagine if you were planning for 50 to 150, and all of a sudden 500,000 showed up. That would be problematic. So in fact, the biggest problem with the Woodstock, and I'll tell you why it's parallel to the country fair, we have a different situation going on here. The poor guy, Michael Lang, who bless his soul, just passed, the organizer of Woodstock. Michael Lang, one of the great producer promoters of all time, who put that show on at 24 years old. And he had 500,000 people show up to his party where he was hoping for 50, maybe 150, and he got 500,000 people showed up. And it created quite a stir till we remember it to this day, the Woodstock, the beautiful chaos and amazing show of people and rain and mud and really, but that showed to the world all the values that we were actually building over here in Oregon. And I'm going to tell you how this all ties together. We had a different approach to the country fair. So 500,000 people showed up, just a shit show beyond belief. But the music was good, most of the drugs were pretty good, and nobody, well, a couple people died, but 2 were born. I think it's 2 died, 2 were born, so it was kind of a equal situation there. But on so Michael's side, that put the 1969 movement on the global map. And in Oregon, we were doing the similar thing here in 1969, where they're landing the people on the moon. So we've got Woodstock, but there's a little predecessor. So what happened if Oregon Country Fair and Woodstock were happening in '69, and that kind of created the culture that we see today? What was happening before that? Anybody know? Patrick, what was before the fair? Was there anything before Woodstock and the fair that even resembles Woodstock and the fair?
When the hell was it, jazz? Newport Jazz?
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
that's a good
Monterey
one.
Jazz.
Monterey Pop.
Pop.
Yeah, so this is important too in your heritage. Anybody know about Monterey Pop Festival? If you don't know your past, you can't know your future. So this is important for everybody, whatever age you are. So before Country Fair, the only thing that I have ever found that you might resemble the fair or Burning Man or Coachella or whatever the hell you think you see today is the Monterey Pop Festival. Again, West Coast. Down our friends down in Monterey, not all that far down the coast. So what was important about the Monterey Pop Festival, and we're going to tell you how this all connects to why you're sitting here today. We'll get there, believe it or not. Monterey Pop Festival, what the hell happened there? Anybody know?
Amazing music.
Amazing music, yes. That's a huge part. So who played the Monterey Pop Festival? Thank you, brother. Jimi Hendrix set the world on fire. So this is very interesting. A black American guy from America who couldn't get arrested literally in New York had to go to England to get famous and come back to America as a superstar, right? So Jimi Hendrix got born basically in the incarnation we know, and he basically had a voodoo incarnation because he's a 27 Club member, right? So we'll tell you about the 27 Club members, but Jimmy was a 27 Club member, which means you got about 4 or 5 years to get it on and get out, right? So Jimmy decided that he was just going to set the world on fire at the Monterey Pop Festival. But this is really interesting because Jimmy's a black American guitar player with an afro. This did not exist. Today we can kind of say, oh, there's black guys and white guys and green guys playing bands. This was unheard of, that the biggest star in the world launched on the stage at Monterey Pop Festival was a black African American badass guitar player. This is so weird. He was sexy and the girls wanted him. This was all not taking drugs, and this was very radical that a black guy is doing this at Monterey Pop Festival. And what's funny, I knew a lot of the guys who played there, and the one thing they didn't want to do, there's one thing you don't want to do at Monterey Pop Festival, go on after Jimi Hendrix, because the legend had spread already. The bands from England are like, The Who was there, and Brian Jones from the Stones, and they're like, there ain't no freaking way that they were warning everybody, do not go on after Hendrix. But the organizers are like, but the festival, nobody knows who he is. And they're like, there's no freaking way we're going on after Jimi Hendrix. And the Who refused. They said, we're not going to play unless we go on before Hendrix. It's just, and they knew because they're from England where he was a huge star. And Brian Jones is warning everybody. It's Brian Jones who got him booked, and Paul McCartney convinced the guy from the Mamas and the Papas was the organ, John Phillips. He's like, I'm telling you, you got to bring this Jimi Hendrix guy over. Oh no, not the Green Parade guys. Right when I'm getting into it, the Green Parade guys come through. All right. They're all into green. I don't quite get it, but they love it. They think it's really super cool, and I like the color. It's a great color, lime green. Why lime green? What was it about the lime green? I don't know. This is how they get in the fair every year, the lime green thing. I don't know. It's all right. Everybody's got to get in somehow.
It's kind of like a green screen.
It's a green screen, and they just get, every year they get bigger and bigger, and they do less and less. I don't know how that worked out. Just if you want to get fair passes, I guess you wear green? That's it? Life is simple if you just wear lime green. Look how big they are. There used to be like 10 of them. Now there's like 150. This gets you, it's a pandemic.
Is that the Queen of England?
That's the Queen of England. She could be here in drag.
Wow.
Oh my God.
Beautiful.
The Queen, you made it. It's been a while. A little controversy over there in England, right? I would be here too if I were you.
Right now?
Get the heck out. You think only country more screwy than ours. All right, yeah, green people. Yay. Go green. Go green. The fair is committed to going green. Oh boy. Now probably some giant dragon's gonna run through here at some point.
This is their followers, huh?
The green people have followers who aren't green yet. They're going green. These are the going green people. They're thinking about it. They've heard about the movement. They're thinking to go green, go green. Catch up with them. They're a little ahead of you. Too easy. That's the easy green path. I don't know. All right. Where were we? Jimi Hendrix and you sitting here today, how does those connect? I'm making the shit up, so bear with me. But there's truth to it all. I'm going to tell you how your meaning of your life happened. Jimi Hendrix, Monterey Pop Festival. Okay, so he set his guitar on fire. Does anybody know that actually happened? We think, oh, we could do that, but actually a black guy who's no one really heard of before is going on after The Who and burning his guitar to the ground, and the whole world shifted about that moment. That was 1967. So that's, believe it or not, partially how you got here. I'm going to show you in the end. You think I'm crazy, but I'm not. All right. That's how I got here, because I saw Jimi Hendrix play, but I only saw him play in a video because I was a little young, and I decided that I was going to be a rock producer, promoter after I was middle of the Jimi Hendrix film, and I looked down and my fingernails were stuck into I was at one of these art theaters watching this Jimmy Plays Berkeley or something, and my fingernails were stuck into the arm pad thing, both of them. I was like, oh my God, this is only a video. Can you imagine what this would have been like live? And funny, I'm not alone, because I one time met Eric Clapton and Pete Townsend. And they told me a funny story. They were watching Hendrix for the first time, and they were the hot shot. Clapton is God, and Pete Townsend is in The Who, and they heard there's this hot new guitar player in town, Jimi Hendrix. So they came to the show the first night in London, and Hendrix is playing, and they both looked down and realized they were holding each other's hands. And he said that Pete Townsend was crying, and Eric Clapton was holding his hand. And like, they were standing there, they're superstars, like big stars. You imagine standing there in a club, and the gays thing and all that was a little underground there, and they were like standing there holding hands, and Pete Townsend was crying. He's like, what? He said, the game's over, man. We're not the hottest shit in town anymore. And they had to accept that because Hendrix had come up. Anybody know a band called The Cream? Anybody heard of The Cream? Sunshine Your Love and White Room. And so here's the true story. This I learned from Jack Bruce, who's the bass player of Cream, that they were all heard that Hendrix was in town. And this is 1966, 67. And that he actually came up to Jack Bruce and said he wanted to sit in for the Cream show in London, where they're the biggest band in the world, where they were just like peaking. And that Sunshine Your Love and White Room and all these things. And this dude walks up who they never met and said he wanted to sit in at the Cream show. They're like, you're gonna sit in with Cream? Sure. It's like Eric Clapton, Ginger Baker, Jack Bruce, 1967, peaking, hugest band coming in the world. Like, this dude wants to sit in. There's no, like, this is a joke. No, you can't sit in. And of course not. And then he's like, well, I really would like to sit on a song. So Chaz Chandler came up, who was his manager, who was bass player of the Animals, another fucking great band, and actually told Eric Clapton that you should let this guy sit in. I'm telling you, he's really good. Like, oh, there's no way. But oh, sure, a guy wants to sit in with Cream. This just doesn't happen. So they let him come sit up at the end. They said, come on up, and they were going to fuck with him and play the super jazzy, freaky music and watch Jimi Hendrix fall on his ass. And instead, he came up and just crushed it beyond belief. To Eric Clapton walked off the stage crying. Right? Again, he's like, God damn, this can't happen. So Clapton walked off the stage, and Hendrix came up and played and killed the show and went on to superstardom. And then somehow, then they knew to bring him to Monterey Pop Festival, which is going to connect to Oregon Country Fair. Watch this. This is tricky. All right. So because of that, they booked Jimi Hendrix at Monterey Pop Festival, and people realized that, oh my God, these festivals and fairs and things, this is happening. So Monterey Pop Festival in 1967 was a very big success. It was tame-ish. There's police and the Flower Children, the people, the National Guard. They actually all got along. It's kind of beautiful. You can watch the movie, Monterey Pop Festival. And that kind of told the world that, wow, we could organize this summer. This is Summer of Love, 1967. We can organize this energy that we all have and do it the West Coast people got it together. They got a little community spirit. We can organize these things and make it happen. And so we put together the Monterey Pop Festival in 1967. And a lot of the people from Oregon traveled down and heard about, hey, we can organize and rally and music and art and dance. They were pretty much just about the music there. But there's one really interesting artist who played at Monterey Pop Festival that really changed history. We know about Hendrix. Anybody else know who played Monterey Pop Festival? Anybody remember? Janis Joplin, Mike Bloomfield, Butterfield Blues Band, Mamas and the Papas, all these guys. But there's a guy called Ravi Shankar who played. And this is very important. Again, how did you get to Oregon Country Fair? What are we doing here with Ohm signs and all this stuff going on? And how do we know all this Indian stuff? Well, part of this happened because Ravi Shankar played at the Monterey Pop Festival. Anybody know who Ravi Shankar is and why that's important? What do you know about Ravi Shankar? Anything? Yes. God, you got it. You see, it's all going to make sense. You ready? So, thank you. Yeah, Ravi Shankar is an Indian sitar player, which is one of the most magical, amazing instruments in the universe, right?
Best in the world.
Just ever. So this sitar is those giant stringed instruments with gourds on it with so many strings you can't count them, but some amazing guy can actually play this thing because he studied for 30 years. And his father studied for 30 years, and the father before him studied for 300 years, and it goes back and back in time. So Ravi was one of these demigods of music. And what happened is, thank you for the Beatles connection, what the hell is Ravi Shankar doing at the Monterey Pop Festival? And we're missing one important band of this era, hasn't quite come in yet, but you mentioned it, the Beatles. So do you know that you are here largely because of a black African-American guitar player and the Beatles? And you wonder, how is that possible? Well, I'm going to show you how that was possible. So the Beatles had turned everybody on to what big discovery did the Beatles make beyond their music and LSD and stuff. They also made one important connection in the world. Do you know what the Beatles connection is to the Oregon Country Fair? And why we see Ohm signs and things everywhere and speakers and spiritual stuff? And anybody know? Yes, thank you. Yeah. So the Beatles, and primarily George Harrison, and this is, you can thank George for a lot of this. So George Harrison had decided that the Beatles need to go to India because they were still singing I Want to Hold Your Hand. It was a good song, and beep, 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 and drive your car, and tax man, and all this stuff is cool. But George had another idea, didn't he, Patrick? What was George thinking about? You know about this stuff.
He was thinking spirits on the spiritual path. He's on a journey.
On a journey. What are we all on? A journey. So this will show you how this all changed. So let's see. So George goes to India, takes the Beatles with him, and his guru is who other than Ravi Shankar. Yes, that was his initial guru, was Ravi Shankar, because he was in India. You can be a guru in many different paths. You think spiritual, sure, but. And they have these lineages that go back 100, 500,000. Imagine if your father and you had been doing the same thing for 1,000 years. It's hard for us to imagine here where everybody wants to change jobs and change careers and do what our parents didn't do. In that lineage, you do what your ancestors did. So he's an amazing sitar player, and George Harrison became a follower and student of Ravi Shankar's, right? And so, again, so he had inspired the melding of the Eastern and Western culture. The really important part is that's what the Beatles got turned on to, and why they went from just a Western world pop phenomena to actually a global consciousness phenomena. So the Beatles imprint is actually all over the fair, and you don't even notice it so much. It's not about so much Let It Be and all that. It's the integration of East-West spiritual consciousness that really happened through George. George told everybody, you got to see this Ravi Shankar guy. He came over to the Monterey Pop Festival. And if you ever want to see one of the most amazing cultural things you'll ever see in your life, watch Monterey Pop Festival movie. And Hendrix will burn his guitar, and Janis Joplin will set the world on fire, and she crushed it. Janis Joplin became another superstar, female. So out of Monterey Pop Festival, you got a black African-American. And that was also Janis Joplin's ascension to superstardom because her set was just so unbelievable. But there's one guy who stole the show, and that was Ravi Shankar. So if you ever watch the movie, if you watch Ravi Shankar, you'll see 10,000 stoned hippies in trance for about 75 to 90 minutes because it takes one song. It's like, so Ravi did his thing, and I have seen a lot of performances in my lifetime. I think I've caught over 1,000 shows of some kind, and you will never see a response like you see of Ravi Shankar playing Monterey Pop Festival, 10,000 people watching, and when he finishes, his mate was called Ala Raka, tabla player, so you got tabla, sitar, you got tambour, you got all this stuff going. No one had ever, unless you'd been to India maybe, never seen such a thing. And the whole audience at Monterey Pop, when he finishes, literally about 6 inches off 10,000 seats, everybody's butt rises, and they stand up and give the biggest standing, because it's been silence for like 75, you could hear a pin drop. And after 75, 90 minutes, so the transmission happened right there in Monterey Pop. It was exactly what the organizers wanted, and George Harrison was thinking this would happen. The organizers and Jimi Hendrix knew it would happen. They all knew the transmission where the Western world would connect at Monterey Pop Festival, bringing both African American culture back to us, bringing East-West Indian culture back through Ravi Shankar. But watch Monterey Pop, and you'll see 10,000 people. And this is the first festival, they think, so no one really knows how to behave. They're kind of making it up. Totally. Imagine 1967, there's no country fair, there's no Woodstock, there's no Burning Man, no Coachella, no bass this and canyons that. They don't exist yet. So these people are kind of making it up, and the cops, the police, the flower children, everybody's agreed that we don't know what's happening, so everybody be cool. So you see these great pictures of people putting flowers in the cop's gun, and they're smiling, and it was just such a freak show that everybody went along with it because they knew that they were making it up. It looks a hell of a lot like what we're doing here today, as a matter of fact. So it's the closest thing that would resemble a country fair is the Monterey Pop Festival in 1967. So your lineage is going back 50-something years, right? Then I asked myself, well, what happened before the Monterey Pop Festival then? How did we get here from that? This is where it gets really interesting. So if Monterey Pop Festival is the first festival that might look like something you're seeing around here today, Patrick, is there anything before the Monterey Pop Festival? How did we get here culturally, spiritually? We're putting men on the moon, got nuclear weapons, we got all this stuff, but how did we get this festival culture going that's so important? Any thoughts, Patrick?
Anything? No idea.
Ah.
That's a first.
That was kind of a first, but there's always something before it. And so I started digging deeper. I'm a bit of a festival historian. So what happened before the Monterey Pop Festival? I think you know a little bit.
Renaissance Fair.
Thank you. Yes. So this is a funny connection. You are all here because of a funny event called the Ren Fair, the Renaissance Fair. Does anybody know about the Ren Fair? Remember, I cued you on this, the Pattersons who lived in Nevada, near your house. So what in the hell does Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, the Beatles, and a Renaissance Fair have to do with us sitting here today? Well, this is very important. Anybody heard of or know of the Ren Fair, Renaissance Fair? A little bit. That's fun. Okay, little. You heard of it? Okay. Anybody been?
When this was called Renaissance.
Yes. Thank you. Funny enough, this Oregon Country Fair is actually the Oregon Renaissance Fair, right? So in the very, very, very beginning, 1969, we were not the Oregon Country Fair as you know it. We were actually a inspiration, imitation, I met a few guys say copycat, of the Renaissance Fair. And what in the hell do a bunch of hippies in the woods of Oregon have to do with a Renaissance Fair? And where did that come from? So the studies got deeper, so I had to go. So I went and met the founders of the Renaissance Fair just funny enough a few months ago. So I met the Pattersons who founded the Renaissance Fair, and this is a great story. So, and you know, the history's, you know, there's kind of like the 60s, if you remember it, you weren't really there. It gets a little foggy here and there, but it goes something like this, that the Renaissance Fair was happening. Anybody know where that came from? And then you're going to find out where you came from. So it's all connected. But think where did the Renaissance Fair start? Renaissance Fair sounds like it could have started Europe? Renaissance? Sacramento? Good guess. Laurel Canyon, thank you. Yes, all right, thank you. Laurel Canyon, yeah, this is a very important. Laurel Canyon was a very special part of the universe in the 60s. It's a meridian hotspot. There's all these that go around the world now and then. Laurel Canyon was one, Topanga, Boulder, Eugene, Ashland. You know, these places that have this little thing going on. Laurel Canyon was the hotspot back then. It was like the place to be. If you were us in the 60s and don't know where your friends are or what to do and all this movement hasn't happened yet, you'd probably go on down to Laurel Canyon and find out. So a lot of the musicians and the bands, the artists, they all moved to Laurel Canyon. Joni Mitchell, Crosby, Stills and Nash, Frank Zappa, on and Mamas and the Papas, they were all living on the same fucking street, excuse my French. Can you imagine that if that was your neighbors? So it takes a spark, right? So this was happening here. We had our spark going on. The Beatles are doing their spark over in London. We're doing our spark here in Laurel Canyon. It's spreading up to Eugene. There's a little band called the Grateful Dead, right? So what in the hell are the Grateful Dead, the Beatles, Jimi Hendrix, and you being here today have to do with each other? You are deadheads whether you know it or not. Yes. So again, if you're wondering why am I telling you this, if you don't know your history, which we are terrible at it in the Western world, like Ravi Shankar has a lineage of 1,000 masters going back. He can tell you the name of everyone. Who taught his father, who taught his father's father, what the name of his father's sitar was, where it was made, what year, what generation. We struggled with Laurel Canyon in 64, really? So this is part of the Western dilemma that we're in, and this is, again, why does this all connect? So Laurel Canyon, Jimi Hendrix, 67, Monterey Pop Festival, the Renaissance Fair. So this was inspired by the Renaissance Fair, which is basically, it kind of looks like this. It's in the woods. They called it the Ren Fair because the Ren Fair doesn't actually exist as a real place. It was a make-believe place that the Pattersons wanted to take this emerging bohemian, beat, hippie thing, which started, it didn't really have a place. But if you put it out as that, it's a little dangerous because these are Jack Kerouac and Gary Snyder and the Further and the Keeseys. These guys weren't necessarily, you don't necessarily want to hang around these guys in public so much because there's people watching, for sure. A lot of these guys spending time in jail and getting busted for drugs, and they had their eye on this crowd, for sure. But if we call it a Renaissance Fair and everybody can dress up and come as this make-believe character, maybe they'll leave us alone. Look, 50 years later, it works. Woohoo! They just fucking leave us alone because they think it's a make-believe place and everybody's just fake and fairies and gnomes and people all dressed in green. So the Renaissance Fair, is this working at all, Patrick? You learning something? As long as you're all learning something, because this took a lot of research in my spare time. It's not my job, but I love it. 15 years in a row here. So Renaissance Fair and us, we are brothers and sisters. So we were called the Renaissance Fair. We happened in the 69, it was 2 weekends. There was two fairs going on at the time they tried so everyone wonders, couldn't we just do this again? Why has it got to be one weekend? We could do this year round. We could do it every weekend. The problem is there's a lot of challenges to pulling these things off. So in the beginning, it was an attempt to try to do 2 fairs, the Renaissance Fair. I think that went on for a couple years. And the big problem, and the Grateful Dead is going to come up now, the big problem was where are you going to do this thing because the man's watching, the people, the permits, the money, the land, the rent, the bills, the tickets, the band. Well, how are we going to do this? And so I had to find a home, right? And everybody needs a home if you're going to do something like this, and we're in a beautiful home today. So does anybody know how the Grateful Dead and Ken Kesey helped us find a home here?
Concert.
Ah, you do know. All right. So, big picture. Beatles doing their thing over there. Woodstock's happening over here. Fair's trying to do their thing there. The man's going to the moon. What else was there, Patrick? I think that's the key elements of this, how you got here today. So we've got to get some land because the man's coming down, the neighbor's complaining, and you can't just keep doing this thing the way we want to do it if we don't have our space to do it in. So I'll make a little bit of this up because you get different debates about it all, but Ken Kesey is very important here, and the Grateful Dead helped you get here. So you all are deadheads, believe it or not, or you wouldn't be here today. So basically the story goes like this. The fair is a little bit in trouble. Ken Kesey's got some problems. He's been in jail. They threw him in jail because he wrote a book, right? His little book, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Anybody heard of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest? It's a good movie, Jack Nicholson. Part of why you're here is because One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Thank you. I won't go into that detail. But Kesey's in trouble. He's trying to make it. They also got a family up here. And again, anybody could correct this a little bit. It's kind of, and share different perspectives. But there's also, yogurt had a hand in you getting here today. Do you know why yogurt?
Nancy's?
Yes, they were the first sponsors, kind of like they made sure the fair happened. Was Ken Kesey's family had a yogurt. And they were starting to make it. That was nobody even when I was a kid didn't really know what yogurt was. So this is good. Yogurt's coming back. The Kesey's putting out yogurt, trying to get out of jail because he wrote a book, right? One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, pretty crazy book, and he's writing some other books, and they're starting to take a certain substance, not yogurt. There was another substance they were taking, which helped get you to the Oregon Country Fair.
LSD?
LSD. Imagine that. So if you put all this together, LSD is legal back now, right? In the early 60s, it's legal. And they're asking people like Ken Kesey and Ram Dass and Wayne Dyer and please take some acid. We want to see what happens to you if you do, because we've tested it on soldiers and they're doing really crazy shit. They're like laying down their guns and climbing up into trees, and the military had a hand on the LSD. And that has another reason why you got to the fair, and I'm going to connect all this brilliantly through my use of LSD. I saw this one night, but it does all connect. So LSD, Ken Kesey, the fair, the Grateful Dead, it's all happening, but there's nowhere to put all this energy, right? Because they keep hassling us and moving us around. So Kesey and some other friends had a brilliant idea. We got to do a concert. We got to raise some money. We got to bail out Kesey and Springfield Creamery, and we got to buy some land. Then if we bought the land, and you've all thought this in your head at night, talk to your, God, we just need some land, honey. We can put our friends, our community there. We're all going to do this big community land. You actually got to pull it off. And we've all, how many failed community land situations have we run into, Patrick?
Just a few.
They fail about 90% of the time, 95, unfortunately. We're just not that good at it in the Western world. I hate to say it. We're just not the best at it. So they said, we got to do it radically different. We got to organize. We got to buy the land. We're going to have it. We're going to be able to come 50 years in a row with all of our best fair family friends. We're going to gather for generations to come. That's the vision. You know how hard it is to pull that off? There's only one place that I go to. I know there's others, every little hidden, but there's one place that pulled it off. We did. We freaking pulled it off, everybody. Thank you. Now, how do we do that? This is really important. Woodstock was a one-hit wonder. What happened when Woodstock tried to do a reunion? Anybody want to know what happened at their reunion? This is our family reunion. Woodstock reunion, not good. Fires, flames, money, burnout, commercial problems, crash. They couldn't recreate Woodstock because they didn't have the family fair foundation. They didn't own their freaking land. They were dealing with bullshit the whole time. So we decided in 1970s that this can't go on. Moving the fair, dealing with the sheriff, moving on, people harass us, no land, we gotta buy some land. So let's go talk to Jerry Garcia and Bobby Weir and see what they think about this crazy idea. So Kesey and his family talked to the Dead, and they said, we have this idea. We have the egalitarian family vision of this land we're going to buy, and we're going to gather for generations. We're going to have music and freedom and peace and love, and we're going to put it for our children and our children's children. Will you guys come play a concert for us and give us all the money, and then we're going to try to buy the land, and you guys can come play whatever you want. And Jerry Garcia said, yes, we'll do that. That sounds great. What a great idea. I think they had to be talked into it severely, but they actually set up in the parking lot out here, where we kind of do the fire show and Miss Piggy's lot, and some rumor has it was over here, it was over there, but basically it was out in the parking lot. And if you can imagine this, the Grateful Dead played in this. Sorry?
You were there?
Literally? Literally parachuted in?
Except Jerry, but the rest of them parachuted. Except Jerry.
See, that's why they did it. Can you imagine if you got Jerry didn't parachute? He scuba dove through the river. I know Jerry. Yeah.
Were you there? I was there.
You were there
In the parking lot.
Well, hold on a second.
Yes.
This is I was.
Very hard to remember it because of the.
Could you add a little color, because no one seems to remember? So if you remember, this is a good sign.
There is a video out on YouTube of it, but yeah, there was some nakedness running around, a little bit of drug usage, a little bit, but it was a very hot day. It was a very, very hot day.
How many people?
Oh, maybe 20,000 tops, I would think. Yeah.
Somewhere 10 to 20,000.
You know, we heard about it a few days ahead of time.
Well, this is important. This guy was actually there. Let's give it up for the guy who was there. Verifying that the Grateful Dead actually did play in this park. He was there.
We sweated and we danced.
Yes, thank you. So, what in the hell, the Grateful Dead and Jimi Hendrix and the Beatles and Ravi Shankar and this parking lot have to do with you? A lot. Here's what happened. So if I find something, tell me if I'm off course. I'll say what I hear from gentlemen, elder gentlemen like him, seniors here, tell us what's going on. So the Grateful Dead played in this parking lot. The band said yes, but obviously if you're going to play the fair, you can't just show up in a tour bus, so you got to parachute in. This gentleman added, so the band parachuted in. I think Jerry scuba dove through he liked to scuba, he didn't like to get airborne. So they decided, well, if we're going to do it, we got to do it right. So I do know that this crazy thing happened. And at that time, I want to say Mickey Hart was not in the band then, so it's just Kreutzmann, Garcia, Lesh, Ware, and forget who would have been keys right then, but That's the band. There's no Mickey Hart in the band because he's got a problem with the dead room. We can talk about that, but big little missing money. His father was the manager. It's a long, strange story. We won't get to that. But Mickey was not invited to the fair. He was a bad boy, so Mickey did not get to play the fair. But the band played. Huh?
Pigpen played the keys, I think. So.
Yeah, I think so. Pigpen?
I think it was Pigpen.
Yeah, okay. So they got the core of the band, no Mickey Hart. He's in the bad boys list. He got sent to his room for problems. But they played out here, and they raised the money. And you can look up Sunshine Daydream, and they actually filmed the whole freaking thing. So if you want to see an amazing prototype of what the Oregon Country Fair and the Grateful Dead look, is it 72? 72? Yeah. That's pretty much confirmed. 72 seems to be the year.
New Riders opened up.
New Riders of the Purple Sage opened. Wow, okay. So that's going on out there, and the idea is we're going to take all this money, we're going to get these cops to go away, we're going to buy this land that you stand on right now. So in a roundabout way, the Grateful Dead show helped save Ken Kesey and Nancy's Yogurt, the Springfield Creamery. The Springfield Creamery got the money together, and we put a down payment down on this and bought this freaking land. And that was the amazing move. And thank you, Jerry Garcia and the Grateful Dead, for making that happen. We love them. I'm a Deadhead, 100-something shows. How many shows you been to, Wendy? Too many. And we all. So there's a lot of Dead, the Grateful Dead in the Oregon Country Fair. So that happened. That was a key moment in 72, 3, 4, that era. We got the land, got the place here. But there's still a little challenge. There's a lot of, this kind of, we're still a redneck county core out here, and there was a few people who didn't like the new neighbors moving in. Look at us all. What's not to like? Believe it or not, some people think that this is a corrupt, sinful thing that we're creating here. It's got to go. It's got to go. So once you get the land, you get the people and the intention, then you run up against the other side of society that just don't see life the way we do. I don't know you know what they're missing? Have they ever been? No. They just didn't like it. What do you got, Ben? Oh, thank you, a Jerry sticker. Perfect.
You talk about the dead, I got
the dead, you got it, man. We're talking about how you got here because of Jerry Garcia.
Yeah.
You know that. He just handed me Jerry. See, I tell you, this is deep. All right. So, where were we? Okay, there. We got the land, we got the thing, but the man is not seeing things. Pink Floyd, I like that shirt. The man is not seeing things the same way as the fair. So there was a time of struggles, it's called, the time of struggles. And this was the 70s, and this is all of us, our ancestors, our cousins, and family, basically fighting the man because we just bought the land right out from underneath them, and they didn't like that very much. And we bought a little more, and a little more, right? And this amazing woman here, why is Jill Heineman right there? You see that sign? Why is she right in the middle of the fair at this bridge, the nexus point, the center of the cultural universe, some would say? Jill is there because what do you got to do when you go up against the man? You can use a baton, you can get a gun, but if you don't have a freaking lawyer, things get really weird. That's so funny about people don't understand when they come to America. I have a lot of Eastern European friends and people that will just go settle it. Well, we can't just go settle it. You know, get a guy, get a bag of money. No. You gotta have a freaking lawyer. So if you don't have a lawyer in America, it can get awkward, right? No matter right or wrong, what side you're on, Goliath, David, giant, ant. If you don't have a freaking lawyer, it ain't gonna happen. So Jill and her friends got her thing is called the Vision Fund because she had the vision of how we could. Oh no. It's the paradesters. They're gonna. I just had this. Oh God! All right, come on through. Do your marching band thing. It's pretty good. They're good at it. They can juggle. Watch, he's got two at one time. Look at that. That'll get you to the fair right there. You can do that. You can get a weekend pass. This is a good band though. They're on. Look at that. Right in time. Horns. So these guys are called the Fighting Instruments of Karma. And this is very important too. These are the Fighting Instruments of Karma. One exposure to this band can wipe away all of your bad karma for a lifetime. Look at these guys. Yes, they're a little gender confused, but they're getting sorted out. You're very popular these days. These guys are more and more popular. Their movement's coming on strong now. They've been at this for 50 years.
It's kind of like bathing in the Ganges.
It's kind of like bathing in the Ganges. This is the Fighting Instruments of Karma. Low. It's a Ren Fair dude, kind of. Good dude? Gal dude.
Get over your need to decide what's in my pants.
That's deep. Woo! The fighting instruments of karma. Okay. It's really hard to concentrate around this play. Just when I think I have it all figured out, that happened. Okay.
Sean,
Yes.
did you hear the correction that
What?
they made when you said gender?
Oh, yes, I did. Did you all notice that? It was a very positive correction about why do we even need to know what gender this person is. We don't. So that's something very new that's up for us now. So I respect this person for coming up to me and letting me know that what does it matter. And that's kind of what it comes down to. We still got to define some of these things. So thank you.
Gender fluid.
Gender fluidity. All right, gender fluidity is now. Okay, good. We like that. We can try everything here. So we'll try some of that.
I think you're backed by the man that wasn't really going to allow the fair to.
Oh yeah, the fair couldn't happen.
Fluid gender.
And they did not like the fact that all of us are still gathering here 50-something years later. They wanted to stop it. Because if we gather here, what will happen? News, information, alternative vision, new ideas, new thought. The next Jimi Hendrix might show up, the next Grateful Dead, speakers, poets, something like that could happen here. It's been seen to happen at other festivals like this before, like Woodstock and Monterey Pop. Big cultural things can happen that change the world. We wouldn't want that to happen, would we? So we had to get our lawyer, Jill, get some money, get the Grateful Dead, raise the money, buy the land, keep buying land to, God, we have hundreds of acres now so that we can actually do this. And this is a real achievement. There are not many. I'm a festival producer, Patrick's a festival producer. What's the biggest challenge, Patrick, when you got to go put on a show?
Size and camping.
Venue. Right. Where can you do it?
To move it.
It is not. I produce festivals with 20, 30, 40,000 people, and you got to find a place to do it. And every time you do it somewhere, the man, the woman, whoever wants you to move. Not my backyard. You got to move somewhere else. So a lot of times you wonder what happened to that festival or that fair or that thing because they had to move because they didn't own the land. So in our culture here in America, we have to own the land, but you can't just own it. You have to do what this sign says over here. I like this little sign, right? So you have to pledge together, respect the earth, for she is sacred. I pledge to honor and respect the flora, the fauna, the human life that supports one planet indivisible with safe shelter, water, soil, love, equality, rights, economic justice, and cooperation for all. That is our mission statement. That is a great mission statement. I couldn't write, could you write a better kind of sentence than that of why we all gather? That's basically it. So the problem, a lot of people want to buy the land, and buy the buildings, buy the city, and buy the town. We actually had to community co-invest and create this space. Every move we do here has to remember that's our mission and value statement. Imagine if that was the mission and value statement of Elon Musk and Bezos and Apple and Wall Street and whoever, Shell, Exxon. That is the opposite. Their statement does not support that. So I always like to look at that sign and say that's kind of what got us here. It's really beautiful. I mean, brilliant people spent years thinking about what to say on that sign because you have to say a few things. Your mission statement, you got to keep it. I think it's pretty beautiful. That's the idea here. And believe it or not, some people don't like that. They think that that's bad, evil, rotten, got to stop it. And that's kind of where we're seeing ourselves a little bit today. We're off this little bit of a crossroads of how we got here. There's one side or other sides that don't see that as your core values. And actually, we have our core values because, geez, we've got our money from Jerry Garcia and the Grateful Dead and that generation, this Monterey Pop. And one thing I think is important, then we'll get to why we're here. Where we're at time, Patrick? 5 minutes or so? We'll see. Okay. So, Renaissance Fair. There was one interesting movement before the Renaissance Fair that we all have to pay tribute to because it's just out of our vision. But what was the movement? Before there was hippies, what was there?
Beatniks.
Beatniks. Thank you. Yeah, I always like to honor the Beatniks because we know the hippies pretty well. We have friends, family. I'm maybe kind of a hippie. I remember my older cousins were kind of a hippie. But then you think, well, where did the hippies come from? And the general idea is that Summer of Love, you've got the Beatles, you've got the Dead, you've got Ram Dass, Timothy Leary, Allen Ginsberg. All these guys did what's called the Human Being. And the Human Being was in 1967 as well. And the Human Being is really important because that was the first time that people from the Leary, Ram Dass, Beatnik, Kerouac, Gary Snyder, all Kesey's, and the Dead, and the young kids, and the elders just before them all got together and they said, let's do what's called the Human Being. Does anyone know where the Human Being was? It was in Golden Gate Park. Golden Gate Park, 67. And you were there? We have a human being, so this is awesome. So tell me if I'm off by thank you for being there. You see the connection? She's here, listen to my talk. And you think, what is this guy talking about? Human being, 1967. Remember, no social media, no computers, no Facebook, YouTube, all that. So what did you have to do? You kind of had to go in person, it's fair to say. You kind of knew the rumor was out that you have to be in Golden Gate Park. Was that do you remember the time, month? Spring, summer, fall, August? Okay. You could be. Yeah, it's, the date's there. A long time ago, there's substances in between. But anyway, about 1967, the human being comes, Summer of Love movement, Kesey, and basically Leary says, tune in, turn on, drop out, right? And Timothy Leary and Ram Dass were very important characters to us getting here because they were the first establishment, imagine this, they're professors at freaking Harvard. They're as big, they had made it, like in their family lineage, they made it as a professor to Harvard. And they are basically changing minds of the world and the universe at Harvard freaking University. And they started taking acid, right? And they were told to take the acid because the government, the military, the police, everybody wanted to see what happens if you take brilliant minds, accelerated brilliant minds, and you drop some LSD on them, mushrooms, San Pedro, peyote. Part of their job was to take every magical substance known to man and write about it and talk about it. And they did, right? Can't remember, there's Wayne Dyer, there was Ram Dass, Timothy Leary.
Andrew Weil.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Andrew Weil, right? Andrew had amazing this year, like 18 or 20 years old. Your job is to take all of the best drugs in the world, go to the shamanic source, go to the lab, find out where they are and take them in copious amounts and write about it and tell your friends what's happening. That was Andrew Weil. He had one of the greatest odd jobs in history as an undergrad student. Study from Timothy Leary, Ram Dass, Gary Snyder, speak to them all, interview them, and then go take the world's greatest drugs and then tell us what happened. So Andrew Weil is an amazing character. So they took their acid, they hooked up with the beatniks, Kerouac, Snyder, these kind of guys, Allen Ginsberg's really important, and they did the human being, but every being, every gathering, you need a catalyst for it all. I'm going to tell you an interesting catalyst, and this will answer how you got here. I have a couple minutes? 2, all right. Oh, wow, this will be fast. Okay, presto, magic karma. So, LSD, the being, Summer of Love, that's all cool, but that's all still material stuff, right? That's all happening on the ground. You got to have a spiritual connection, right? And that's really important. Another thing, how we got here, with all this just material stuff, doesn't matter. So there was a really fascinating spiritual connection. This guy here, Jerry Garcia, you all know who George Harrison is, right? George Harrison, Beatles, guitar player. George is very important and Jerry are very important. This will conclude my story. So what does George Harrison, Jerry Garcia, and spirituality and the country fair have to do with you? It's the reason you're here. Because George and all these guys, they're taking their acid, they're doing all the thing, and they realize our culture, our religious, spiritual principles are effed up pretty bad. We've got Jesus on a cross, he's all bloody, with crowns on. I don't even think he would like his own religion so much. The other people running around, I don't know. We got to find a new meaning in spirituality, or why are we gathering? Why are we doing all this? What's the point of it all? And how did you get here, right? So both Jerry and George, for completely different reasons, they needed a spiritual teacher. And they actually reached back into the most, what the hell is that? Bigfoot. Could be Sasquatch, been known to show up every few years. I think it is. We have to get the Yeti. So, without spiritual meaning, this is what George figured out for the Beatles and Jerry figured out for the Dead, but they went 2 different paths, unfortunately. We'll speak of that. So, Jerry was into the, I don't call it hedonism, but enjoying the moment, full on. Like, if you met Jerry, you knew Jerry, it's like full on right now. Like, everybody wanted to be with Jerry wherever he is right now because it's fucking going off. Something's happening. He's one of those guys. Just go find Jerry. Whatever he's doing right now, he's probably not just kicking it, eating an apple in a hammock. He's just doing something with amazing people around. That was one formula. And then you have George Harrison, on the other hand, who wanted to escape all that. He's like, it's all bullshit. I'm in the Beatles. I actually want to leave the Beatles. And do you know what George Harrison wanted to do and why it helped influence you to be sitting here today? George said, I want out of all this. This is all illusion, Maya. What I want to find is my spiritual meaning. I don't want to sing, I want to hold your hand and get back and text man and all that. So he met a very powerful guru through Ravi Shankar. Remember I told you earlier about why Ravi Shankar is important? Well, Ravi Shankar said, well, the most authentic guru around today is this guy called Srila Prabhupada, who's founded Krishna Consciousness Movement, right? ISKCON. You've seen the Krishnas dancing all over in the orange robes and all this, and we think it's kind of funny and hilarious. But actually, George Harrison said if our movement doesn't have a spiritual meaning, there's nothing to it. So he started playing a little sitar, the song Norwegian Wood. You heard Norwegian Wood by the Beatles. You'll notice something funny in there. There's a little sitar going on. And they started taking a little acid. They started smoking a little ganja, right? It was Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan turned them on to weed. Dentist gave them some acid. They went to India. George heard about ancient Vedic scriptures, the Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Vedic culture. It said if we introduce a drop of Eastern religion with Western know-it-all how to do things, we'll create this new spiritual East-West fusion, and this is going to change the freaking world. And actually it worked. So the introduction of Eastern spirituality, I've got my beads and my malas and ohms, and you look around here, the ohm signs everywhere, beads, malas. Why is that all here? It's because George Harrison, Jerry Garcia, Jerry's ashes were buried in the Ganges River. Bobby Weir went to India and made sure that Jerry's ashes were spread in the Holy River in India. Why? Why would Jerry Garcia go there? George went to the Holy River in India to bring back this information. And you saw all his songs. He wanted to leave the Beatles and become a Hare Krishna. True story. So the movie Get Back just came. You guys hear about this Beatles 6 series, 6 hours. One of the big dramas in that movie is that George is leaving. So George Harrison quits the Beatles in the middle of the movie. And again, this connects to all of us. He wanted to drop out of whatever material thing you thought you were supposed to do. He's the most famous, most influential guitar player in the history of the world. And he went to his spiritual teacher, Srila Prabhupada of Krishna Consciousness, who was a Swami who sailed over here on a boat with $3 in his pocket and nothing to speak for it, and ended up living with George and John in his house. That's in my book. My book's over there somewhere. We'll get to that part. But this is how you got here. You ready? Conclusion. George Harrison, Jerry Garcia, Srila Prabhupada decided that East and West and global consciousness had to fuse, and the place to be was West Coast America, 1967. And if we got together then, we planted these values, we took the best of the Western culture, the hippie movement that Oregon has to offer, and Woodstock in New York, we put it together with George and Jerry and some spiritual consciousness, we can create the new form of culture that will actually thrive and survive. And that was these guys' sole mission in getting this fair going and all that. So if you borrow some of these ideas I've shared with you today, you'll understand how George, Jerry, Srila Prabhupada, and without a spiritual mission and consciousness of God, what's the point? There's no reason to run around doing all the stuff we do all day long if you don't have a focus for that. And Jerry, unfortunately, he didn't quite get that focus. John Lennon, he had it, he lost it, right? This is straight from the source, like from George and people hung out. John was really into it in the beginning. Across the universe, he was getting it. He was chanting every day. My dear friend was living with John at the time, and he used to get up in the morning and chant and pray. They do the Upanishads, the Vedas, Hare Krishna chants, Gayatri mantra, Maha mantra. George, John, Yoko, my friend, Srila Prabhupada, every morning we're chanting. They built big altars, and they had these amazing estates, 40 acres estate, with all their money and all their wealth. What they really wanted to do was build an altar for Prabhupada. And they would chant and pray every morning. And this went on for it. John Lennon's case, my friends and Srila Prabhupada were living with John Lennon and Yoko. And they were chanting, eating vegetarian, all the things that they were doing. And then one day, Yoko didn't show up for morning chants. And a few days later, John didn't show up. And then they came to my friend, Srila Prabhupada, and George was trying to get him to stick with it. And they stopped chanting in the morning. And Yoko came out one morning with a big ball of hashish on her table. And guys like William Burroughs and these characters were hanging around. Anybody know who these Naked Lunch and these kind of exiled beat poet guys? And John decided that looked pretty tempting. Yoko, woman, drugs. We know that. So John stopped showing up for morning prayers, and Yoko, and I can tell this today because it's 25 years later, so I have permission to tell you this. Yoko asked Prabhupada and all the Krishnas to leave. the house, the mansion, the big mansion. And they're like, leave. Like, no one's ever asked Prabhupada, who's the guru. No one's ever asked the guru. The guru knows when to leave. The guru will go when it's time to go. He actually came from India around the world through San Francisco to get into your living room and talk to you because you're John freaking Lennon. You need to listen. And Yoko's like, nah, I mean, yeah, I'm not blame, no blame. It's just they're going, Burroughs is here. There's some hashish, and if you do some hard hash, there's some other things you can start putting in yourself. And John went that way, and guess where they went from John's house? George said, well, guess what? I just bought Fire Park. It's like 50 acres. You could all move here. So my friends picked up, and they moved over to George Harrison's house and moved in with him, right? And George said, I'm leaving the freaking Beatles, and you guys can stay here. And in the movie, Get Back, you'll see this battle because George is like, I'm out of here. Where he was going, he wanted to join the Hare Krishnas and just forget this Beatles thing. And that's the tension, the backstory that you don't always see there. But you'll see my friend, Shama Sundar, in the very first scene, there's a Hare Krishna guy on the floor called Shama Sundar. He was George's confidant between Prabhupada and George, was Shama Sundar Das, who's still alive today, and an Oregon guy, by the way. And so George said, I'm going for the Hare Krishna thing. He said, don't leave the Beatles, but because people think you're weird, you cut your hair, you leave the Beatles, they think you took bad drugs. Just sing songs about God, My Sweet Lord. And my friends helped him write the song, My Sweet Lord. My Sweet Lord starts out really nice. It's got hallelujah, hallelujah. If you listen halfway through, the chorus changes. Anyone know what the chorus changes to at the end? The Hare Krishna mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. That's the transition point. So how did you get here today? Here's how you got. Go listen to My Sweet Lord, the song. And that's when the transmission was decided that East-West US, East-West Oregon, we all got to come together through these important influences of Jerry Garcia, Ravi Shankar, Krishna Consciousness, the Grateful Dead, Ken Kesey. All the visionaries helped put this together. Ancient lineage of India, which taught people how to respect your land, your peace, your generations, your elders. What's really cool here at the fair, elders and young kids are all equal. Everyone's the same here, right? Coachella Festival, not so much, right? Here, everybody's equal. So that's a lot of the story, and I go in detail in my book 1, and I have book 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 6. I was fortunate enough to meet a lot of these people, so I'm kind of a transmission giver. Because I meet people like this lady who was there and this gentleman who was there, and then I have that knowledge, and then we pass it on down the line, and this is how you kind of keep lineages and things like this going. So it is really important that we gather here and keep the fair going. There's lots of branches. It's a funny story, and it's all true, and everybody can add the color to it, but that's kind of how these important characters help us get to the fair. And what's really important is who are going to be our next characters that are going to inspire all of us. Right now we have a very lack in the world of these inspiring characters. So that means that each one of us here has to become our own super inspired character, because there aren't people stepping up right now. We got to find the next Jimi Hendrix, George Harrison, Ravi Shankar, Jill Heineman, Ken Kesey, Gary Snyder. It's hard to get these people out right now with all this TikTok and Facebook and all this crap. So the authentic ones are all making an effort, probably here this weekend, because I came from Los Angeles via Vegas, sprained my freaking ankle, could barely get here last night, but I've been here 15, 16 years in a row since the first time I came. I can't think of any other place I've been 15 times in a row, and it's my birthday. I will say that it is my birthday. I am fortunate enough to have my birthday at the Oregon Country Fair every year, more or less. It moves around a little bit, but people wonder, why the hell do you go to the Oregon Country Fair? It's my freaking birthday. Where else in the world could I be with 20,000 super cool people? We could have a party anytime. It's 4 or 5 days long. And if you know what happens after dark, I'm not supposed to talk about that, but something that goes on here after dark. It's a rumor, total rumor. There's really nothing. It's very quiet here. But
It goes better.
yeah, I'm not supposed to get into that. I won't. But there's a little party after dark sometimes. But that's how we all got here. And my name's Sean Ahern. It's a real pleasure to serve to the fair. Remember, we all are the same here. We all pay, donate, contribute, volunteer to be here, right? Everybody. Even the bands, the artists, all of you, it's all a contribution. And all of the money that's raised here goes back into, guess who? Us, our community. It's been a real pleasure to grow this out from that little station to a real stage. Thanks for hearing us and learning a little bit about your history. And we'll see you later. Enjoy the fair. You're at the best place in the universe that you could possibly be. Your good karma has got us all here together. So just
pass it on to your brothers and sisters. What amazing, great karma you have to make it to the Oregon Country Fair. People are jealous from all over the world. I brought 2 of my friends this year who were fair virgins, Wendy and Patrick, and they're so excited to join for my birthday at the fair. So thank you so much. Spread the love, peace, and kindness. You're very, very fortunate. Remember that all day, whatever bugs you. You're so blessed to be at this place in the universe, SpiritTower at Oregon Country Fair. So thank you so much. And we got some new people coming up. It'll be exciting all weekend at SpiritTower. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, thank you.